Yes, welcome in. Badgers won 3 straight under Coach Fickell in Big Ten play for the first time as they take care of Northwestern 23-3 on Saturday down in Evanston. It was probably a game that you could have put a few more points on the board, but a win's a win, Jesse, especially in Evanston. Though I will say, I think like they've outscored them now, 63-10 or something like that in the last, no, was it 65-10 in the last 2 meetings down there?
Yeah, if you want to cherry pick those two, those are good ones to pick, obviously.
What have you done for me lately?
Yes, Northwestern loves to muck it up and make this a very difficult challenge for Wisconsin. And so I know this may not be the finest Wildcats team you've ever seen, but they were still 3-3. They were coming off a blowout win against Maryland. And we've seen Wisconsin teams go down there and lose. So it was not pretty. It was scoreless after the first quarter, but Wisconsin found a way to get it done with a tremendous defensive effort, enough offensive plays. And as you said, now they've won 3 in a row, and they're playing, obviously, their best football this season.
And an important time to do it, obviously, with what is still on the horizon schedule-wise. We're going to get to all of it, what went right, what went wrong. We'll get a few listener questions in as well. Before we do, the Home Field Apparel is the official apparel sponsor of the camp. Best vintage gear in the game. Go check them out, homefieldapparel.com. You can use the promo code Bucky24 for 15% off your first purchase. All right. For a third week in a row, the Badgers win. For a third week in a row, our What Went Right segment has some juice to it, has some substance to it.
Yes. We started the last couple weeks talking about the offense, and rightfully so, because they put up 500-plus yards in back-to-back Big Ten games for the first time since 2010. But we absolutely need to start with the defense, because I don't know that we've talked enough about the performance they've put together here the last 3 games. I remember the last time we spoke to defensive coordinator Mike Tressel, the big story was, why isn't it coming together? You talked when you got here about meshing the elite, and that was a big talking point for a long time, and it had not come together. Well, they've been great for 3 games. Obviously got some huge plays consistently. And I mean, look at the numbers. The last 3 games, they've outscored opponents 117-16, and they've given up 1 touchdown. Didn't give up one, obviously, to Northwestern. Came up with some crucial stops near the goal line, got a big safety, obviously had a, 3rd and goal stop at the 8, and then ended up blocking a field goal. So they've just been really good. And I think what stands out most to me about the defense, we touched on this maybe last week, earlier in the week. It's not one guy. It's not 2 guys. Here's your 2 guys at linebacker, and they're your All-Americans. No, it's coming from everywhere, whether it's Elijah Hills or Ben Barton, and Kurt Neal. I think the defensive line deserves a lot of credit too, but obviously multiple guys. And Preston Zachman unbelievably knocked 2 guys out of the game. One, his own teammate, Xavier Lucas, but the other, AJ Henning, the best, one of the best playmakers for Northwestern. So they're getting it done everywhere.
Yeah, it was a tough scene, because we talked about on Thursday what AJ Henning and what's his name? Bryce Kurtz, what they had done so far this year, having 748 of the nearly 1,000 or a little more than 1,000 yards receiving for Northwestern so far this year. And, Jack Lausch never got on track. The Wisconsin defense was smothering. And they, I think, for the first time, maybe in this 3-game stretch, and the defense has been great in the stretch. I think the offense might have been just a tick better, just because that is what we were focused on. But I think today the defense ruled the day. They had a hell of a game. They gave up 209 yards on the overall. I saw Jack Lausch say afterwards that, we moved the ball pretty well, and we just didn't execute. I'm like, what game was he watching? You did not move the ball pretty well. You had 209 yards of offense. What would give you the idea that you moved the ball well? But that's fine. He's a little delusional, and we can always go with, maybe you were Northwestern kids aren't all that smart.
Yeah, they probably disagree with you on that. I think they did have some success with his mobility, but it wasn't consistent enough. And when they got close, they weren't able to finish. Obviously, there was a 51-yard field goal that was short. I mentioned the Ben Barton blocked field goal, a couple other key stops, but No, I mean, it's hard to say you move the ball when you put up those numbers. And what's really interesting over this 3-game stretch is how good the passing defense has been. And I realize we are not talking about the level of quarterback that they may face later, or anywhere close to a high level quarterback play. But still, those 3 guys, I think, have completed 43% of their passes for about 100 yards a game, no touchdowns and interception. So there's just been basically making teams one dimensional, except that dimension isn't working either. So yes, it was an outstanding performance by the defense on a number of levels.
I don't think we're blind to the competition, right? We're not
Yeah.
blind to the teams that they played. We understand that, and there's context to it. But as we said after the last 2 weeks, you have to go out and do it. You can't just be like, yeah, bad team, we're just going to roll over them. We saw that earlier in the year with Western Michigan and South Dakota. You're not just going to roll over teams if you don't play well. And Wisconsin played well, especially defensively on Saturday. I think the one stat that has stood out for me these last 3 weeks, when you take into account what had happened against USC and Alabama, and I think we kind of talked about it maybe on Thursday, is third downs. Wisconsin, 19 of 31 was USC and Alabama combined in back-to-back weeks. These last 3 games, including today when they went 2 for 14, 8 for 42. So they have been very good on third down, very good on getting off of the field. And also, outside of the couple of runs by Lausch, didn't allow explosive plays. Nearly any, I should say barely any. So yes, again, opponent, we get it, but you still have to go out and do it. And they did it again today.
The competition has been the caveat throughout this 3-game winning streak. And the further it goes along, you realize the quality of those opponents. Look, Purdue is now 0-4 in the Big Ten, got absolutely annihilated by Oregon. So sorry I picked Purdue to cover. Apparently the number 28 or whatever it was
wasn't big enough.
No. And obviously Rutgers just lost to UCLA, which is a bad football team, and now Northwestern. So those 3 teams are a combined 2-10 in Big Ten play. And look, if you want to throw USC in there, that's USC's only Big Ten win. They're 1-3. So those 4 teams collectively are not very good. Having said that, and I keep going back to this, hey, Wisconsin has played inferior competition in recent years and not done what these Badgers have done in these 3 games. So, yes, you can only take so much. Next week is going to tell us a lot more. This next 4-game stretch is going to tell us a lot more. But if you want to live in the moment and see that this team is 5-2 overall, 3-1 in the Big Ten on a 3-game winning streak, and has played about as well as you could have possibly hoped for, that's something. And I think Luke Fickell felt that. In talking to him after the game, he really feels like what they're doing right now is building on something and giving them a chance. And I think that's all they wanted to be at this stage of the season, is just put yourself in position to play your best football at the end of the year.
There's this term, it's called adversity defense, and it's how you react to bad things. And I remember earlier in the year, they didn't do a very good job of it. They weren't great at it. Today, 2 more turnovers from Braedyn Locke. We'll get to that. But the fact that they went 3 and out, they forced 3 and outs on both of those possessions that they turned the ball over. Big time adversity defense, and getting stops inside the red zone again in terms of keeping the ball out of the end zone. They were forced to settle for they blocked the field goal, obviously, but they also stopped them inside the 5 or inside the 10 when they eventually did kick a field goal. So the adversity defense has been on point these last few weeks. They've just not allowed anything once you get in the red zone outside of 1 touchdown to Rutgers.
That was one of Luke's big talking points earlier this season when things weren't going well. He felt like that was one of the things that they just were not able to handle for whatever reason. When things didn't go their way, they were not able to respond. And we've certainly seen that response the last 3 games. And I think it's also worth noting here how much of a factor what Northwestern did to Wisconsin a year ago was in the week leading up to this game. Because Luke brought it up on Monday at his weekly press conference with us, and he brought it up again during his introductory statement today after the game. And in listening to his locker room message post-game, which the Wisconsin football account posted on its social media platform, he brought it up there too. So these guys were well aware of that. And I do think that matters. You can try and find motivation in all sorts of places, but all you had to do was look at what this team did a year ago in a game that Wisconsin should have won or felt that it should have won and just got the doors blown off them and booed off the field at halftime. So I think that speaks to the motivation clearly, but the ability to execute at a much higher level at this stage of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic to watch. You hope that the injury to Xavier Lucas is not serious, because he has played above and beyond what a true freshman normally can, and you would like, obviously, to have him next week against a Penn State team that got this week off, had a chance to watch, but they are ranked third in the country, and I can't imagine them falling here. Probably going to come in here, obviously, top 3, and they're going to need all hands on deck. The defensive line, you mentioned it earlier, biggest question mark coming into the year, biggest question mark maybe even through the first few weeks of the year. And now I thought, fantastic. I should even say just the defensive line, the front 7. They got after the passer today. John Pius with his first career sack. It's a strip sack. That, to me, is the play of the game.
Yes.
I don't know if you would agree with this. That was the play of the game. I think Northwestern would have been, I don't know why they were passing. I really don't. Like, why? I know Wisconsin gets the ball after half, but very few positive things are going to happen when you're in the shadow of your own goal line trying to pass late in the half when the team knows you're not going to run. And Wisconsin teed off, got it done. And obviously, Elijah Hill's recovered the fumble, and Wisconsin's in on a play later. Those things from a defense just make it so easy on an offense. 3 yards, we can do that. Like, we can get 3 yards. That's fine. And then they get the safety later on as well. It was a masterful defensive performance from Wisconsin, and I just kind of like the way some of the things are coming along in the defensive line, and even outside linebacker Sebastian Cheeks certainly has stood out when been given an opportunity here these last few weeks too.
I'm glad you brought up the strip sack and the fumble that Elijah Hill's recovered, because that absolutely is the play of the game. It's the sequence that really defined everything. I have no idea what Northwestern was legitimately thinking in that moment, because at the time, Jack Lausch was 4 for 14. They had not done anything, and you're backed up near your goal line with less than a minute left in the first half. I just did not see a scenario where they'd be able to move the ball 80 to 90 yards and score a touchdown, or even really put themselves in field goal position. Just get to the half down 7-0. Obviously, that's not what they did. John Pius had a great game. I think he also is the one who flushed Lausch on the 3rd and goal from the 8 that ended up being an incompletion. And Wisconsin scores on the very next play. Cade Yakimelli runs it in from 3 yards out, and it's 14-0. And the game is effectively over because Northwestern just could not move the ball, and Wisconsin's defense was that good. And I think we should also mention Wisconsin punted on 4th and 1 from the Northwestern 43. And I'm sure people were up in arms about that, but also, you're going to get the ball to start the second half, and your defense has been really good. And obviously it worked out. So yeah, there was that play. Sebastian Cheeks was great too. He was also the one who helped get the safety. It was Kurt Neal and Cheeks. And so you can just go down the line of guys along the D line that have been able to step up. They have certainly exceeded my expectations, and even from where they were 3 weeks ago. But this speaks to the fact that they're getting plays at every level of the defense, and it's exactly what they've been looking for.
Significant test coming up next week, but these past couple of weeks at least gives you hope that it's going to be a game, in a large part because of what the defense has done. Now, Penn State is better. They have better players, and we'll see if the defense is able to keep it going. But before we move over to the offensive side of the ball, because we were talking defensive line with Ben Barton, got his hand up and blocked a field goal. And you also had the block punt by Charlie Jarvis, who, I guess the ball ended up rolling a whole bunch anyways and didn't exactly act like a block. But the special teams, it was a bit of a roller coaster on Saturday. But the good things, certainly, and then the good things I already mentioned, but then Vinny Anthony with the return after the safety set them up in really good spots. So those, Atticus Bertram's weapon, I think you could say all of that. We'll get to the negative on the other side of this, but special teams showed signs of really truly being able to help Wisconsin through anything. And Atticus Bertram's, the way that he's able to just put it right where he needs to. And I know he was a little upset about kicking a couple into the end zone last week, but he's a weapon. And I think he's going to be a huge weapon in games against better opponents, because field position matters so much. We've seen throughout. I remember, when Ohio State had a great punter, or Iowa with a great punter, how big of a difference it makes when you're able to flip the field like Bertram's has, and the way that he's able to down balls inside the 5. It's a huge weapon.
This was one of those real complementary football type of games that Luke has been talking about for some time. You get two big plays on obviously the punt return coverage with Jarvis getting in there, and the block field goal from Barton. And Atticus ends up hitting 2 punts inside the 5. Now, you got to have your guys getting down the field and stopping it before it hits the goal line, but he's putting it in the absolute perfect spot. One was at the 5, one was at the 1, and that makes all the difference in the world. So the special teams, which we've not spent a ton of time talking about outside of what Atticus Bertrams has been able to do, deserves a lot of credit, because those are impact plays. And if you can do that in other moments against better teams, 1 possession game, that's the difference.
Yeah. Offense, switching to the other side with offense, some good, some bad, but obviously another very nice game from Tawee Walker. He's over 100 yards for a second straight week and averaged 5.5 yards a carry. And when I look at that number, that 5.5, and it's like, oh, okay, that's solid. But when you look and see the longest run he had was 24, I think it just speaks to how well they were able to move the ball, even methodically with the run game, even though he was not breaking out 55, 60-yard runs like he did against Rutgers. To me, that is a huge positive that you were able to run the ball, even if it wasn't effective for huge plays, to move the sticks. And he's been able to do that just a ton here these last 3 weeks, ever since he was given the bell cow status, I guess you could say.
Yeah, this is exactly the type of performance on the ground that they were going to need in a matchup against Northwestern. To be physical, to be stout, control the line of scrimmage. Walker's just been so good since he's taken over the number 1 role. And part of that is the comfort level of carrying more than 12 times a game. But he talked after the game about, essentially, we know he runs with a physical style. I marvel at how hard he runs and how he's able to push the pile forward while also having a very nice burst. But he said, when you do that every play, and when I have the O-line blocking the way that they are, teams don't want to deal with that every play. And he feels like he can wear them out over the course of the game. And where have we heard that? We've heard that with a lot of really good Wisconsin teams, good running backs, good O-lines over the years. And that's the kind of mentality that they're clearly trying to get back to and have been able to achieve in the last 3 games. So Walker deserves a lot of credit. He's gone over 100 yards now in back-to-back games, and though he didn't score a touchdown, this was still a really impressive performance because of the way that game went. The first 2 weeks, they got a lot of pass plays, a lot of big pass plays through the air as far as first 2 weeks in this winning streak, and that's not the case in this game. Braedyn Locke didn't have a great game, and so you had to rely even more on your run game, and Walker gave it to him consistently. I think he ran for 7 first downs during that game. So that's pretty good.
It is very, very good. The probably should have had one more had they not decided to run a toss play on 4th and 1. But again, we'll get to that. Katie Akamili gets 1 carry when the game's still in doubt and scores a touchdown, and from under center, no less. So they seem to be going under center quite a bit ever since this whole thing came up. And for the most part, it's worked, but obviously they're still had success in shotgun converting on short yardage. I just wonder why the change. Why do you think that is it just because they feel more comfortable? Do they notice teams are not perhaps ready for that? I don't know what it is. Why you would make the change when you've said it yourself. We're going to do what works, and shotgun has worked for a large portion of the season outside of 2 very glaring examples against USC and against Alabama. But they are being more diverse, I think, in forcing teams to look at them a little bit differently when they do.
I do wonder how much of it is sending a message about the identity and the physicality and that we can still do this. I don't know, but it's effective. It's successful. And that's what matters. I should have asked Braedyn this question after the game, but I was thinking it when it happened. The touchdown pass to Tucker Ashcraft was under center. And I'm thinking, is that the first pass Braedyn has ever thrown from under center, like in his life? Because in Texas football, he ain't going under center ever. Certainly didn't do it in his year under Mike Leach.
So he was asked that.
Oh, okay.
And Yeah. Colton put it out there. Colton
Okay.
Bartholomew from the Wisconsin State Journal said it was his first touchdown under center probably since Pee Wee.
Okay. Well, there's your answer.
So,
There's your answer.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It worked out well. This is I guess that was the drive after the fumble, right? That was when, they got backed up, and they were almost having to start with inside their own 5, but they ended up calling a touchback. But I think it was, what was it? 8 plays, 80 yards, and 5 different guys had first downs or touchdowns. Braedyn Locke, Tawee Walker, Tretch, Ashcraft, and Pauling all got first downs or touchdowns on that drive. Spread it around.
It's pretty
right?
good.
Yeah, I mean, spread it around. And the reason I mentioned that one is because it's an answer. It's an answer just like the defense answered. After you turn the ball over inside your own territory, the defense gets a 3 and out. What are you going to do? And what they did was march right on down the field and make sure that it was not going to end up being a 4-quarter game.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was not by any means a flawless offensive performance. There were a lot of drives, a lot of things they left on the table, but they did enough. They ended up scoring 3 touchdowns in a game where they only needed 1. And that was the best drive of the day. And it shows what they're capable of. They just obviously are trying to be as consistent as they can.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Braedyn Locke, maybe not his best game, but there were a couple throws that really stood out to me. The one that he threw over the linebacker on the sideline to CJ Williams, essentially a whole shot, but just the guy was right there, and he just very nicely put it over the top for CJ Williams to grab for a first down. And those were some of those throws that you're like, ooh, very nice, very nice. And again, a win's a win. How do you think he played today?
I mean, not great. He did enough to get the job done, and we asked him about the interception, which, I mean, I guess we could wait to get to what went
we can.
but
some of the positives. What are some of
the
what are some of the positives that stood out for you? I don't want to take yours, but pulling the ball around the goal line continues to be an absolute killer, or I shouldn't say killer, an absolute the smart move, the right move, everything that comes along with it. That's going to be put on tape, and it's going to start forcing teams to respect you. And he's done it twice, and both of them have both on the goal line have resulted in touchdowns.
At the very least, it shows he's capable of doing it. I mean, that was one of the big questions and one of the big separators with Tyler Van Dyke. So it forces the defense to think a little bit more. What's going to happen here? It's not just, he's going to the running back or whatever it is. I think that's also part of the chess match here, is putting stuff on tape in moments that can make a team down the road think more.
Anything else that jumped out at you on the positive side of things?
I think we mostly covered it. I do think it was good late in the game to get Darian Dupree going a little bit. The game was obviously well in hand. Tawee Walker didn't need to do anything more, but it's been really interesting to see how they're trying to get him involved. And there weren't a lot of carries from him early on. It was pretty much the Tawee Walker show. So it wasn't like he necessarily put up some big numbers, though he did have a nice catch, the one into the right flat. Kind of could see that one coming. Like, that's why you put him in there in that sequence. And that's one of the things that he can do well. So that's at least something that I thought was noteworthy, is him being able to stack up some good sequences as a ball carrier, which we have not seen a lot of since he's bumped into this number 2 role.
I thought he ran more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was more aggressive, and I know he was aggressive on his touchdown run against Rutgers last week, but I feel like he was seeing things a little bit better, and certainly just one cut and go, and not really dancing, just looking and kind of trusting himself that his instincts are right, and he's going to be able to find a way through. But I know he's still averaging under 4 yards a carry too, so that will not be forgotten by some. All right, let's jump into what went wrong. We can stay on the offensive side of the ball. For a 6th time in 9 games, Braedyn Locke turned the ball over. This time he turned it over twice. The interception. You guys asked about the interception, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Well, I wasn't sure who he was throwing to, because he overthrew CJ Williams, but he underthrew Tretch Kakahuna. I think he was a deep receiver, and it got picked off. And he said that it was intended for CJ. but he missed him, and he said it was bad. Like he was willing to put it on himself. That's now an interception in each of his starts this season. He knows you can't have that, but you mentioned that was a concern coming into this one about the ability for him to take care of the football. And fortunately for Wisconsin, the defense got that 3 and out. And of course, the second turnover too, where Braedyn lost the fumble. Now Tucker Ashcraft, I think, got beaten on that play as trying to pick up in pass pro, and Braedyn lost the ball. But that's 2 turnovers from your quarterback. It's too many.
Just better awareness in the pocket, I think, is probably in holding the ball out like this when you're trying to step up in the pocket too. There's some shared fault there with the pass protection as well as Braedyn not taking care of the ball, which has been an issue in the pocket. I mean, the fumbles last year that we all remember, and those are just mistakes that are amplified in this type of a environment. So I mean, he knows it, right? I mean, it felt like, I don't know if he wasn't trying to call CJ out or what, but it looked like I think he was expecting CJ to stop in that little zone area there, that little opening that he had, and instead he took off and threw the ball. But I think even if he was there, that ball was going over his head. Like it just wasn't a great throw. So he had some really nice throws that ended up not being caught, but that throw you can't make it. And you just can't. And he has put it on tape as being a guy that's going to not take some chances, but is going to have maybe a play or two that he really, truly, truly, truly wants back.
Yeah. Not ideal. Not ideal.
Yeah. So some other negatives. Vinny Anthony drop, CJ Williams drop. I kind of say Vinny Anthony I don't know which one was the easier catch, because the first one, I don't know if Will Pauling thought it was intended for him. It was intended for Vinny Anthony behind him. And I think maybe Vinny Anthony just lost it as it was coming. But those plays you have to make, because if he catches the ball, that's a touchdown. That's an easy touchdown, probably. And then the CJ Williams one made a great effort. But those are the type of plays that high-level teams and high-level receivers and high-level offenses make. And there have been, I think, a few too many drops for Braedyn Locke since he's been the starter. And we can acknowledge that. I have no problem acknowledging it, that there have been some drops, and those two stand out for me today.
Yeah. The playmakers made plays the first 2 weeks in a way that I don't know that we had consistently seen. And they weren't as sharp as they'd been. So it's not ideal. And I don't know. I'll have to look up later in the week the volume of drops from these guys. I don't know that there have been a ton, I feel like, this season, but there have been enough. And
I feel like what they consider a drop and what we consider a drop are probably two different things. Like, Kenny Guyton has to probably grades it himself and will decide what's a drop and what's not. And I imagine Pro Football Focus, whatever the stats you use, will probably be different than maybe what Kenny Guyton sees it as. But that just happens. I'm trying to think anything else on offense in terms of what you didn't like, other than the play call on 4th and 1 and running a toss play inside the 5-yard line.
Yeah, that one. Look, we're all backseat drivers or whatever, Sunday morning quarterbacks when it doesn't work. But still, if you want to be physical and say you want to put it on your line, you're tossing the ball away from the guys that are going to be able to block it up. And just, I don't know. Yeah, it was an odd call in the moment.
I have to think that was the first under center toss play that they've run in these past 2 years. They just don't do it. So maybe they were thinking, catch them off guard a little bit. But when you're bludgeoning them like you did, bludgeon them some more.
Mm-hmm.
Run right up the middle, make them try and stop 230 pounds coming at them. I think that would be my choice. And again, when you're looking back on it, it's very easy to say that because it didn't work. But felt like maybe trying to outsmart yourself a little bit, getting too much in your head. Defensively, anything?
I could nitpick and say, like, they gave up some plays to Lausch on the ground. I can specifically think of was like 3rd and 12 or something, and he picked up a big yardage. And there's one play that escapes me, but I want to say 4 defenders missed on another. But
on
like
3rd down, those are I believe the 29-yard run or whatever it was the 4th down. But there was another play on 3rd down earlier in the game where, he made people look a little silly.
Yeah, in Northwestern's first drive, the tight end gets loose and catches a ball down the field. But like they had 200 yards of total offense and ended up with 3 points. And so while they may have moved it a little bit, they certainly didn't do enough to seriously threaten in this game consistently. So it's sort of nitpicky, but of course there are going to be a handful of plays where you go, all right, you could have done better there.
Yeah. Special teams wise, that field goal makes me feel less and less. The field goal team makes me feel less and less confident and I know it wasn't the entire unit's problem, and the ball didn't get up high enough, and it should get up plenty high enough in that situation where it's a 40-yard kick. It's not like it's a 50 some odd yard kick. It's a 40-yard kick. Ball's just got to be a little bit higher.
Yep. It was kind of strange to see back-to-back blocked field goals on consecutive drives. I don't know if I've ever seen that, but Vakos knows he's got to be better. And we've seen the leg that he has, but got to be consistent, because what did he miss? 35-yarder last week?
37? Was it? Whatever it was.
Somewhere in that range. Inside 40. You got to have those points.
You definitely do. All right. Anything else negative that you want to talk about?
I think we pretty much covered it. This is the 3rd straight week where our what went right segment spanned like 80% of the conversation, which obviously means the Badgers have got it going right now.
Yeah. So we'll jump into fan questions. Forgot to ask for them after the game because I was doing the post game with Ben, but some people did reach out. One of them, and this is where it goes, because we're all always looking towards the future. People are going to forget about Northwestern very, very quickly, and it's going to turn into Penn State week very, very quickly. And so John asked, am I crazy thinking the Badgers have a decent chance versus Penn State? The Bama loss could be chalked up to TVD blowing out his knee, and the USC loss was 2 quarters of bad football. Am I taking crazy pills or being realistic?
It's still early here, but I just can't help but feel like this is a gettable game for Wisconsin. I know that Penn State is 6-0. I don't know how good the Nittany Lions really are. Obviously beat USC in a close game, and now USC is sitting there at 1-3. And certainly Wisconsin went down there and lost 28-0 in the second half, but played a really good first half against USC. But the way Wisconsin has played in these last 3 games, I don't know how much of it's going to fully translate in a matchup against an undefeated top 3 team, but it feels like it's some of those things could be sustainable. And you throw in the prime time, it's a 6:30 game. It's got that special something at Camp Randall that comes along every now and then. And I know earlier in the week you posted video of the Gilreath kick return 14 years ago when Wisconsin beat Ohio State. Look, that's the last time Wisconsin beat a top 3 team. So even though Luke Fickell is now 0-4 against teams that are ranked, I feel like this is gettable. I'm not saying they're going to win right now. It just feels possible.
What do you think the spread ends up? What do you think the spread ends up being?
I mean, it's got to be less than a touchdown. 4.5.
Let's see what we got here. What? I thought I saw 6.5.
I bet that goes down by kickoff.
I thought I saw 6.5. I'm not saying I did. I thought I did, and irrelevant, I guess. So yeah, I mean, this has a chance. This is what we talked about, and you want an opportunity to win big time games. You don't come to Wisconsin to play Northwestern or Purdue or Rutgers. You come to Wisconsin to play the likes of Alabama and USC and Penn State and Iowa and Oregon. Like, those are the teams you come to Wisconsin to play. And to have this opportunity, when 3 weeks ago, we did not think they'd be anywhere close to having this opportunity. Like, you would have picked Wisconsin to lose by double digits or more. they have given people hope. And I don't think it is a situation where someone's taking crazy pills to say that they have a realistic chance. I mean, I don't think Penn State's been a steamroller, right? They have not been just rolling over teams. They've needed some big time plays down the stretch to beat teams, including USC. So it's a good team. There's no doubt about it. Actually, a very good team, I think Penn State is. But I think Wisconsin has the ability to potentially give them more problems than we thought they could 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, obviously, what you have to go on is what you've seen, and our recency bias is in play, but that's because they've performed so well the last 3 games. And it feels like they found something that makes you believe it's possible. So, again, sometimes we don't know how good either team is. And I don't know what the answer is for Penn State, because you're right. I mean, they played a non-con game earlier in the season, and I think people were kind of scratching their head about why is this game even close. So we shall see. I mean, I think Oregon is the toughest team on the schedule, and they backed it up by housing Purdue. So this feels more gettable.
College football fans said, when people talk about a resurgent Wisconsin, that's where I start to stray. I understand teams get better, but that USC team really laid the hammer on UW outside of the gifts they left them in the first half. Is that an overreaction? I mean, is that an overreaction or no?
To say that this team is, it shouldn't be called a resurgence based on the last 3 games.
Yeah.
It's like, it is what it is. It all comes with the caveat of yes, but. So you can decide what you want to do with that information. Like, they have dominated 3 opponents, and those 3 opponents have a pair of Big Ten wins. So those are both true. And it's also true that Wisconsin has played inferior foes and not outscored them 117-16. So you can decide whatever direction you want to take it. But what I would say is, I think some of the staples that Luke Fickell has wanted for his program have emerged in a way that we have not seen at any point since he got here. And those are the things that I believe can carry the program forward and need to carry the program forward. And that's why they've at least got a chance. The conversation shifts every week, but I certainly think the conversation has shifted since the USC game to say that it's possible. Is it probable? Well, that's different.
It's a week-to-week sport, right? I mean, you get Alabama beating number 1 and now 2 losses in their last 3. And it's football. Anybody that thinks what happens in September is still going to be relevant come October or November, I think doesn't fully grasp maybe what college football is about, an improvement. And to think that Wisconsin's not better than they were earlier in the year, I think would be false. I don't think that's what he's saying. He's just saying, like, he doesn't believe it. What we've seen the last 3 weeks somehow confirms a Wisconsin team being, resurgent. But go and win on Saturday night, and people will have to take notice, and people will not be able to make excuses anymore. Yes. And I think, and again, that I have no problem saying that that probably includes me, right? Like, they have an opportunity to shut everybody up based on what had happened after the USC game, and some of us talking about whether there's no way they're going to get to 6 wins. There's no way they're going to go to a bowl, and here they are, 1 win away from bowl eligibility, and still in the mix. Very unlikely, but in the mix to potentially sneak into the playoff if they were to somehow run the table here these last 5. So teams get better. Other teams get worse. That's just how it is. Wisconsin is clearly getting better.
Yes.
So
resurgence, you can debate that one, but there's no denying they're playing better football.
No denying it at all. So, all right, we'll be back middle of the week as Wisconsin gets ready for a huge game at Camp Randall next Saturday against Penn State, a night game. Place should be rocking. A lot at stake for both teams, to be honest. A lot at stake. Should be a fun one. We'll talk all about it coming up here as the week goes on. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.